So for those who weren't able to play the PC playtest for Star Wars Hunters last weekend, part of the playtest was actually getting our first look at the Sprocket Rework, which will be making its way to the game in Season 5. And I've got to say, he is absolutely insane now. He feels like easily the best support hunter in the game now. And so today I wanted to run through all of the changes they made for those of you who haven't played him yet, as well as just my thoughts on all of those changes too. Now, I guess it's only right to kind of start with his previous set, or I guess the current set of abilities that Sprocket has in the current version of the game. So obviously, even though this rework was live in the playtest, if you play right now on the Switch or mobile, Sprocket is still exactly how he used to be. Now, his initial abilities that he's pretty much had since he launched are his targeting drones, which essentially just sends a drone out that will reveal one enemy and also increases their damage taken. He then had the medical droid, which is kind of that like area of effect ability where when you put that droid down, it will just heal anyone in the area of effect. He then had another ability called drone defense, which would be, it's almost like the opposite of the other drone ability. So essentially that sent a drone to a teammate and himself as well, and instead of increasing their damage taken, it obviously grants damage reduction instead for himself and teammates. Lastly, for his ultimate, he had the Ultra Turret, which was pretty basic. It is essentially just a regular turret. You'd place it down and it would just automatically attack enemies. Now, that was his previous, or like I said, I guess current set of abilities. And although it was a decent set of abilities, he did just seem to be relatively weak. He's had a few buffs, but for the most part, he has kind of been seen as like one of the worst support hunters and generally just one of the worst hunters in the game. Not that he was like so far off everyone else. He is still viable. You can still do well with him. But I think the reason for this rework is that the devs clearly agreed with all of us who were saying he is a little bit underpowered. And so they have gone along and essentially just completely reworked Sprocket from head to toe. Now, when it comes to his new set of abilities, and I should mention as well, his little training droid like weapon that he has where he, he's not the one shooting, it's just the training droid shooting for him. That's exactly the same, and also his passive ability, as far as I know, is exactly the same too. So it's not like he's drastically changed in every way. He still plays relatively similar. They've just mostly reworked those abilities. Now, he actually has one less ability too, which might sound like a negative, but I think that he's so much more potent now that he doesn't really need an extra ability. In fact, if he had a third ability, I would actually say he's going to be overpowered. So I'm actually glad they've done it that way. Yes, he has less abilities, but all of his abilities are far more useful than they previously were. Now, that new set of abilities is that instead of the targeting drone and the drone defense that he previously had, he now only has one drone ability that is called the healing drones, or I'm not too sure on the actual names of these, to be honest, because I wasn't really looking in the menus. I literally just played matches as him. But he has a drone that is pretty similar to the previous one, but instead of giving a damage reduction to a teammate and himself, it actually heals instead, pretty similar to the medical droid. So this will just send one drone to a teammate and one drone to yourself, and not only does it continuously heal, but it seems like you get a pretty big burst of maybe like close to 100 HP when that drone first gets to you. So this is a really good ability. You do also have two uses of it as well. So you can send one out and then you can kind of just keep one in the tank if you want to save that for later, and that second one will then recharge, or you can send two out at the same time, and it just obviously means it will take a little bit longer to recharge for both of those uses. So this new healing ability is really good, and like I said, getting that like roughly 100 HP boost when it first hits you, I don't know if it is 100 HP, but it feels like a pretty big chunk. That in itself is really good, but then you'll get like a continuous tick of pretty much 10 health for, every second for maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 seconds afterwards. And yeah, overall it is a really good ability that I think is definitely better than both of his previous drones and just kind of suits his character a little bit better in my opinion. Now, for his second ability, he then has a turret, which is essentially the exact same as his old ultimate, though I will say it does feel a little bit weaker, and that's probably fair because obviously that was his ultimate, so it'd be kind of clapped if his ultimate ability just became a regular one. It works pretty much the same, but I have to assume it deals a little bit less damage, and it seems to also last a little bit less than the previous one as well. So it's not quite as good, but it's still very useful. And this gives him a little bit more damage output, which is, I think, one of the things that all of the support hunters kind of lack, is that yes, they're really good at healing, and that is obviously their primary goal, but in my opinion, you kind of need them to be able to actually defend themselves, because it doesn't matter how good of a healer you are. If you're just getting killed all the time because you can't deal any damage yourself, then you're not going to be very useful. So I really like that they've put that turret as just a regular ability now. It does still have a pretty long cooldown, so in my opinion, it's not overpowered. You can't just spam this thing all the time, and it also does not last very long at all. So it's kind of like a very tactical thing. You kind of need to save it for when you really need it. And yeah, I'm very happy with pretty much both of those changes they've made to his abilities. Now, last but definitely not least, he then obviously has a new ultimate ability, seeing as the turret was pretty much his ultimate. However, this new ultimate is still just another turret, this one being an explosive turret though, and this one is very, very solid. Again, it feels pretty balanced because it doesn't really fire too many shots. It does die fairly quickly, and it also has a pretty slow rate of fire as well. So even though it deals really good damage, it doesn't feel overpowered. It feels like if you use it in the perfect situation, and especially if you combine it with other abilities and stuff, then it is very, very good, but it doesn't feel like it's just absolutely clapped like Scorer's ultimate, for example, when the game first launched, where that was just so far better than every single other ultimate. It doesn't feel that good, but it definitely still feels very good. So that's pretty much it for the changes that they've actually made. Now I'm going to get onto my thoughts, but before I do, if you guys want to see more Star Wars Hunters content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. There is a lot more content on the way, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, like I said earlier, I think he is now just already the best support hunter in the game after this, provided they don't do a bunch of nerfs, because obviously this was just like the playtest. Maybe they've purposely made him a little bit overpowered to see if that works and to see how much they need to kind of tone him down. And maybe once the game actually launches, then he's going to be a little bit weaker than he currently is, or at least was in that playtest. So I need to reserve judgment until he actually launches in the game, but if he's going to be as good as he was in this playtest, he is comfortably the best support hunter in the game, in my opinion. Now, ironically, in my last re-ranking, which I do every season, I also said the same. I actually said he is now the best support hunter in the game, but that was a very close margin. And realistically, it's just kind of because, one, I've been playing a lot more Sprocket in recent seasons, and so for me, he has just literally moved up the ranks. But then also, Scorer has kind of been continuously nerfed. She was very clearly the best at the launch of the game, and I'd say up until season 2, she was still the best. Maybe even season 3, I still think she was probably the best. And then when it comes to Zaina, she just has like next to no firepower. Her blaster is decent if you can land headshots, but at least for me, I'm not the most accurate player, and so at least for me when I'm playing as Zaina, I feel like I'm pretty useless. I'm very good at healing with her, but that's just because she is unreal at healing. And yet if I want to defend myself and stuff, it feels like I can't really do anything, to be honest. So even though I did technically have him #1 in the support hunter ranking, like I said, it was a very close margin, but now, in my opinion, it is not even close. He will easily become the best support hunter in the game during season 5, again, provided they don't make any changes. And even though it's like 6 weeks away, I'm very, very confident to say he will be in the meta in ranked without question. I would be absolutely shocked if this version of Sprocket does not become absolutely crucial for playing ranked, just the same way that Scorer was, and just the same way that you kind of need 3 tanks and a support hunter. There are certain things in ranked that are kind of like a lock-in, and for me now in season 5, I would pretty much say that Sprocket will be a lock-in for the meta in that mode. So he is definitely pretty insane. Now, again, I don't think he is like completely unbalanced or anything. He maybe does feel a little bit overpowered compared to the other support hunters, but in my opinion, that's actually more to do with Zaina. I think Zaina now needs a pretty decent buff just to be competitive, because she still is probably the best healer in the game. Her back to bomb is really good, but she essentially just has that one ability. Yes, she's got the dodge ability, but that isn't really anything special. You can just roll out of the way a few times. And so to me now, Zaina really needs a buff to actually compete with the other two. And then Scorer probably still just needs a little tiny buff to compete as well. I know that sounds dumb because she's just got a bunch of nerfs, so why would I be asking for a buff? The reason I'm asking for a buff is that I do think the support class in general is very underwhelming. They are obviously very good at healing, but I think they all need to be just slightly better at surviving and dealing a little bit of damage. I don't need them to be as good as the actual damage hunters and stuff like that. That would then become overpowered, but I do just think if you play as a support hunter and they're not good enough to get a few kills here and there to defend yourself, then what's the point in even playing them? Because you're just going to be running out there trying to heal people and you're going to die over and over again, unless you've got like incredible teamwork playing with a squad or something. So like I said, I think the other two now need a little bit of a buff, not so much with Scorer. I think it's mostly just to do with her actual damage on her weapon. I don't think she needs too much, but just a little bit to make her kind of even. But in saying that, if they don't touch her, I think she's also in a pretty decent spot as it is as well. So that is everything you need to know about the Sprocket rework, as well as just my initial thoughts on it. Once the rework actually goes live in Season 5, I'll probably make a bit of a follow-up to this and, you know, talk about him once I've had proper hands-on in a ranked season and stuff like that. So there will definitely be a lot more content focused on Sprocket, as well as any future hunters that get any reworks, because to me it's a pretty interesting thing having hunters that we already know getting big changes. It almost feels like there's a new hunter being added to the game. So keep your eyes peeled for all of that. But like I said, that is going to do it for this one. Thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.